The left arm of the Pirate King has taken a big ol' swing. Mr. Yarl is acting very suspicious again, and as it turns out, Gunko has some rather controversial taste in music. But the biggest revelation of this chapter happens right at the beginning. I'm actually a bit taken aback by this chapter because I feel like the thing that should be the biggest reveal in this entire arc, maybe even this entire saga so far, was front-loaded and then promptly forgotten because of all of the action. But Ripley takes Frankie to what appears to be some sort of ancient laboratory, which is estimated by Lilith to be about 3,000 years old. So not only does this building predate the Void Century, but it does so comfortably by more than 2 millennia. In fact, there's only 2 confirmed things in the One Piece world that are older than this slab. One of which is the Palace of Alabama, which is 4,000 years old, and the other is, I guess, what remains of the Tree of Knowledge in Ohara, which was planted 5,000 years ago. The next oldest thing in the One Piece world would be the Golden City of Shandora. But even that was built almost 2,000 years after this lab on Elbaf. And it's a very interesting space because it's hard to tell at the moment whether it was built for giants or more human-sized individuals. From what we see of it, the scale looks to be very appropriate to Frankie, and like Ripley would have a rough time getting around the interior. And there's also a shot of Bonnie and Lilith waving out of a window, or I guess an ancient window, aka a hole in the wall that does look like it was made specifically for human sizing. But then again, in the next panel, the window is magically a lot more massive than in the previous. So as per usual, Elbaf scale art is very difficult to make judgments about because it's always drawn the way that it looks best in each individual panel, so there's not a lot of consistency, and as it should be, I guess. We like things that look good. But I'm very excited about this slab because we now know what Lilith's going to be spending her time doing, and she is going to lose her mind with this 3,000-year-old tech because that is something that none of the other Vegapunks ever had the privilege of studying. I also really like that Lilith said that she wanted to show it to Frankie because that Frankie Vegapunk dynamic is very undercooked in my opinion. Frankie spent 2 years using Vegapunk's work as a parasocial mentor figure, and I just really want Frankie and Lilith to collaborate together on something, and this may be that something. However, we should not ignore that Oda is also tying Jewelry Bonnie to this location, and that may be because this new discovery of old technology could give us important insight or even an outright mechanism to restore Bartholomew Kuma. Because as much as Lilith said that she'd do it previously, I just wasn't sure if that was possible, and it felt like it might have been a bit of a forced happy ending to suddenly science our way out of that problem. But this lab gives us a pretty satisfying reason to turn that into potential reality. Although I am a bit worried about the building itself because it's in a very unsafe location right now. It's currently being attacked by the Thunder Nightmare, a very evil Zeus. And just a little thing about this encounter, the way that Bonnie responds to this threat is very cartoonish. The only thing that's missing from this reaction is the eye popping. But it's a very nice little inherited quality from Luffy, and she might be the one to deal with the evil yet kind of adorable Cloud by very briefly using the Nika form, which I'd actually really like to see because that would be a battle of Child's imagination versus Child's imagination, and we could see if Bonnie has been gifted enough hope and liberation to combat the various nightmares of the world. And of everyone on the island, you would need to think that Bonnie and Luffy are the ones best equipped to deal with these nightmares because they're the only ones that can tap into that purity of a child's mind. So if you're not a child, sucks to be you, you've lost your brain powers, but the next best thing for you would be to check out the Calm Belt, which is a channel currently undertaking the project of re-editing the Grand Line Review video library into themed compilations. Very long videos perfect for your very long form activities like driving, drawing, gaming, sleeping, whatever it is you do for extended periods of time, we've got you covered for as long as it takes, with no need to pause what you're doing and pick a new video every 15 minutes or so. They're not just compilations either because throughout the years there have been what I refer to as lost videos, and these are Grand Line Review projects that were fully written, recorded, and edited. However, for various different reasons, were never published. I'm not going to tell you where they are, how many there are, or even what they are though, because that's not really in the spirit of One Piece, is it? My videos, well, they're yours if you want them. I left everything I own in the link in the description. So if this new long form channel meets your needs, then please do check it out and make sure to subscribe because that is insanely important for small channels, and I look forward to seeing you there. But for now, let's get back to you, me. Thanks, me. Elsewhere, a real star of this chapter for me is of course Brook. When the Draugr first appeared, I think a lot of our initial thoughts was, that dream creature sure does look a lot like Brook. And it was hilarious to hear Brook yell that, it's a giant me. And it might even be setting up a joke down the line. After all the nightmares have been beaten and all of the kids have been saved, that one kid who feared the Draugr wakes up and the first thing he sees is Brook, and he is terrified. Before we move on from the Draugr though, one of the Elbaf giants says something very interesting, posing the question of, so it's not just a regular zombie? And this could be nothing. But to me, this implies that regular zombies are an accepted existence within this world, or at least on Elbaf. Even though the only way we've been able to create them thus far is with Gecko Moria's abilities. But what I also really appreciated about this section of the chapter was the detective duo that is Jinbei and Brook. They were both incredibly logical by grounding the chaos in the idea that this is almost certainly magical fruit related, and because of the sheer quantity of strange occurrences happening at the same time, Brook also flagged that we may be dealing with more than 2 intruders. The fruit maths makes a lot of sense. We've got nightmares, we've got thorns, we've got arrows, and they're not all going to be the same power. So we're dealing with at least 3 intruders. And here Nami also makes the decision to inform Yarl about Shamrock, or at least the man who looks like Shanks, which honestly I think it's insane that Nami of all people didn't do this earlier. We've known for quite a while that there have been at least 2 intruders on Elbaf, one of them suspiciously Shanks looking, but she just went back to drinking until, oh no, it's the problem that we knew about happening. Who could have predicted that? And just because I'm feeling extra paranoid this week, I'm wondering, right, if Yarl was the wrong person to tell this information to. We know that Shamrock had some sort of connection to King Harold, just because of the suggestion of Shamrock being here to visit his grave. So Yarl might hear tell of this scarlet-headed man and know exactly what's happening here. And subsequently, Yarl is also the one who tries to make sure that the Nami group do not get involved. He says, no, my treasured guest, you must not fight battle on our behalf. Please stay here and remain safe. Which I can't imagine most other giants would have suggested. I think that giants like Dori, Broki, Oimo, Kashi, and even Colin would be proud to ride into battle with God Usopp on their side, as well as the rest of the brave Straw Hat warriors as well. Look, I'm probably being very unfair on Yarl, and I'm definitely actively searching for betrayal, but it's because he is 100% hiding something. That much we know. The dude was there when Loki allegedly killed Harold. He knows the truth. We just don't know if Yarl's hiding something for the better or for the worse yet. But something that I'm not seeing anyone talk about is probably the biggest and worst thing that's ever happened to One Piece, which is that in this very chapter, 4 crew members have abandoned the Straw Hats and set sail under a new captain. Nami, Brook, Jinbei, and Usopp are now members of the Colin Pirates. And this was such an adorable section. Colin really does have that perfect child design, and it reminds me so much of Luffy. The face is quite simplistic, Colin's expressions are always clear and over the top, and when he genuinely smiles, it is like a burst of sunshine. So when Colin does get the Straw Hats to agree to let him be the captain, that is one of the most adorable things that has happened in this arc so far. And also, a thing it is that I want to flag is Colin dragging this sack of weapons behind him. This is a funny little panel because it looks like Colin's going overboard because he's keen for battle, but this could also end up arming the other Elbaf kids when they manage to wake up and give them all a chance to become brave warriors like their parents. Earlier in the chapter, Mr. Colin also flexed that he was Scopa Gabban's son, but I don't think that any of the Straw Hats were around to hear that. And what I'm really looking forward to is the group reacting to this information, because everyone here except Nami heard the story of Scopa Gabban, left arm of the Pirate King, at the party, and so there could be a pretty funny moment of them finding out that Colin is Scopa Gabban's son and everyone just being floored. And something that I think could go over a lot of people's heads in this chapter is that one page of the Holy Knights. Very important page. And if you're not properly in tune with One Piece, then this page could look like a bit of a waste of time. Because why are we bothering to spend time with Gunko listening to music? Well, it's because the song that she's listening to just so happens to be by Soul King Brook. The song is called New World, and it was announced in the manga, but we actually heard quite a bit of it in the anime, and there is a recording of the full track available online. But Brook wrote this song as a celebration of the new beginnings of the Straw Hat Pirates. He did it because Sabri Archipelago was an island that held a lot of regret as well as the memory of their defeat, but Brook sees it as his role as musician to bring hope through entertainment. And so New World was a song designed to create a new memory of Sabri, something to celebrate. And the thing that I love most about it is right before the song starts, Brook states, "Music is always on our side." Which was a cool line back then, but in modern One Piece, it has gone on to be be extremely thematically relevant, so much more than anyone could have predicted. Because now the number one thing that seems to characterize who's on our side is those who dance to the drumbeat of liberation. And this even goes as far as characters like Kizaru. If you're unaware, it was confirmed by Ichiro Oda that Kizaru was the one who gave Luffy the food on Egghead Island, and look, do you know why? Because just as Skeleton Man said, music is always on our side. And that there Marine Admiral was having the time of his life dancing to the drums of liberation during Bonnie's pizza party. So I started to speculate about this in the last chapter, but seeing Gunko listening to Brook's music, I have to ask again, if music is always on our side, then is this a sign that Gunko is going to flip and be on our side? Especially with St. Summers asking, what, Gunko, you're not happy with the current state of the world, or is this new old business? But the other interesting thing about choosing this song specifically is that Brook openly dedicated it to Luffy. Brook said at his concert that Straw Hat Luffy the pirate is alive, he'll be the king of all oceans. A calm, quiet departure doesn't fit him at all, oh baby. Now granted, Gunko probably wasn't at this concert, although it would be the most amazing flashback if she was, because it would have been real easy to just slip down from the holy land of Marijois to see the Soul King for a day. In fact, even easier if you can teleport. What am I saying? It doesn't even matter that Sapadi is so close to Marijois. It's just teleport. But when you look at what's happening right now, Gunko and the Holy Knights are having a very calm time on Elbaf, and Gunko is retreating from this calm to listen to a song dedicated to changing the world and a man who is the enemy of calm. So just how is Gunko going to react when she's in the same area as Luffy using Gear 5th and she hears the drums of liberation? And look, we can take this one massive step further. When Gunko's design was revealed, the internet did what the internet does and got very upset over the lack of pants. But here is the new conspiracy theory. Gunko is such a massive Soul King fan that she is dressed at all times ready and willing to show him panties. And panty vision is something of a lifestyle that's evolved for Gunko, being such a big fan, and we could be looking at the first successful panty viewing for Brook since he snuck under Big Mom's legs during Whole Cake Island. It's also mentioned that listening to this song, maybe not this song specifically, but this listening to music is part of a post-meal ritual for Gunko. Gunko herself doesn't want to use language quite as strong as that to describe it, but I think it's interesting that Oda does use that language in his dialogue, and it almost gives me the impression of saying a prayer or saying grace before dinner. Whatever it is, it's evidently very important to Gunko, and I just find it very intriguing to see the language of ritual being used to describe someone performing an act that is not in worship of the world nobles, and in fact in direct opposition against them, whether Gunko knows it or not. She's definitely a much more interesting character than I gave her credit for in her introduction. And it's gotten to the point where, yeah, I do still miss Shamrock quite dearly, but Gunko is now the Holy Knight that I'm most fixated on because there's a lot going on here. Just as there was a lot going on inside of Dory and Broggy, which is what delayed them so long. And as soon as it was mentioned that Dory and Broggy were still in the bathroom, mate, I knew exactly what was happening. Because I had a lot of friends in uni who used to practice this, I guess we'll call it strategy. They would never pace themselves and they'd all get horrendously drunk by 10 or 11 p.m. and then go off to the bathroom for a strategic ejection so that they could continue drinking. And seeing Hakoku sovereignty is always a treat no matter who's performing it. It's usually Dory and Broggy, but there was that one time where Big Mom and Kaido did their own improvised version of it, and I can't help but feel that by the end of this arc, we could see this attack being used by Harudin and Loki, and have them both symbolically inherit leadership that way. But alongside Dory and Broggy is Mr. Scopa Gabban, and I'm really glad to see him here because I don't think we got anywhere near enough of a showcase during his brief clash with Luffy. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this man got the nickname of Mountain Eater outside of the bedroom. With that said, I do have a bad feeling about Scopa Gabban showing up here because from a storytelling perspective, the fact that he's here right now, his presence, it diffuses all tension. The Holy Knights have been putting in some good work, yes, but I still don't see them as a particularly big deal without Shamrock. And if Scopa Gabban, of all people, the left wing of the Pirate King, is deciding to tap in here, then surely there is nothing that can stop him. Like if Silver's Ray Lee were to rock up right now, you would feel like victory is guaranteed, and I feel the same with Gaban. Gaban, which is why I'm very worried about what's going to happen next, because stories aren't particularly interesting without any dramatic tension. So this would be a prime opportunity for Oda to escalate the threat once more. And yes, this might be wishful thinking from me, but one way to do that would be to reveal that Shamrock has disobeyed orders and is still on the island. Because if Figgle and Shamrock was to come face to face with Scopa Gabban, then the outcome of that clash is something I cannot predict, and if anything, I would be worried that Scopa Gabban, very much not in his prime, could fall to Shamrock. But I'm not worried about that happening with Saint Summers, Gunko, or killing him. And this does remind me of Egghead Island. There were a lot of moments where that arc felt very firmly in our control, the way that Elbaf does with the activation of Gaban. But every time Egghead felt under control, Oda immediately escalated the threat and kept us on a pretty relentless knife's edge all throughout the arc. So I just can't see things being anywhere near as simple as the end of the chapter may have us believe. And you've always got to keep this in mind. What would be the greatest dramatic gut punch in any situation? And in this situation, I think that smack punch would be for the guy who was called invincible to be wounded, defeated, or otherwise removed. If that happens, then we're in trouble. Then we are feeling the tension. So for now, I'd say enjoy this high wallet loss, because unless Elbaf is about to be a very short and unsatisfying arc, I dare say that we've got some pain incoming. I don't know from who or from where, but just don't say that I didn't warn you.